productivity has just looked like a 24-hour cycle, and that's just not where we are. And so rewriting the narrative for ourselves really does help in how we feel about ourselves, and our relationship with our to-do list, our relationship with people, our relationships with ourselves. And it's really important that we take the time to look at it and start working with it.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync. Today I have a special guest, Janina Hamilton, and she works with online female service providers and coaches who are tired of feeling inconsistent, overwhelmed, and guilty for resting. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate listening to this. She works with women to create a business structure that works with their natural cycle energy instead of against it, resulting in predictable productivity, increased revenue, and the freedom they desire when they first start their business. So we're going to be talking, if you are a female entrepreneur, business owner, this is super applicable to you. And we're also going to be talking about how you can apply these principles if you are not your own boss and you are working for someone else, you're not an entrepreneur. So don't turn this off if that is you. This will still be a great conversation. So Janina, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Taylor.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited about this conversation. We originally connected and I was on her podcast, which we'll share a little bit about that and where you can find her later. And I was like, I want to have her on my podcast because this is what she's doing is so interesting and unique. And I think so many women can benefit from this information. So let's just start with a little bit about you, like what you do, what inspired you to open your business doing, helping women sync their cycle, or not sync their cycle, but like sync their business tasks with their cycle. And yeah, anything you want to share just to like kick us off so listeners can learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this business has had kind of several iterations. So, before I had a business, I worked as a paralegal in a law office, and I worked with one woman lawyer, and it was absolutely amazing. Like, she taught me so much about business and about respecting your own energy and taking breaks and things like that. So, when I left the office, I started a bookkeeping business. And I learned a lot about myself when starting a business, as a lot of us women do. Sometimes we think that we have all of it put together, and it just isn't like that. We think that we can work like a man and do everything with the same energy every day just because that's what productivity looks like from hacks and things like that. And so I absolutely burned myself out while having that bookkeeping business. It was very successful. I had plenty of clients and a lot of work, but I was not balanced in making sure that I was taking care of myself. So I had a bout of burnout there. And then in 2022, something just switched, and my husband went into the hospital for about a month. And when that happened, I realized that I could not keep going the way that I was. So even though I was still able to work while he was in the hospital, which was also crazy, that I wasn't able to take some time off to be with him, make sure that he was okay. I knew that I had to do something different. And that is when I really started to look deeper into cycle syncing. And so I started doing it for myself there within the bookkeeping business. And I learned that I could still do everything that I was doing before, just within my bounds of my energy. And then I think back to the things that my boss taught me, and I was like, well, this is probably what she was doing. Right? Like, she just didn't tell me that this was what she was doing and how she was doing it. And so eventually I decided I was done with the bookkeeping business, and I started learning about emotional intelligence and self-care and boundary setting. And so I started a self-care business, and it had several iterations. And the last pivot is this. I realized that this was really what I was doing. I wasn't just teaching women how to take care of themselves. I was teaching them how to use their energy cycle to benefit themselves, to make sure that they are still feeling productive and feeling like their best self without burning out, as well as how to come out of that fog, how to come out of that rest phase without the fear of burning out, what to do, when, and how to do it in a way that feels good to each individual person.
I love that. And this is such a timely conversation because a couple weeks ago, I interviewed a nervous system coach, and we were talking all about for the high achieving type A perfectionist. I'm like raising my hand here, woman,
Yep.
how to rest and really take care of your nervous system. So I feel like this adds like a whole nother layer to it of like, how you can do that and then layer the cycle thinking and work with it in your business around that or your work.
Yep. Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah.
So let's just briefly go through, for someone who might not know, the different phases of your cycle.
Right. So, most women or most people, they like to set goals at the beginning of the month, right? Like day one of the month. Well, for women, that day one of the month is the first day of their cycle, right? And that's when we want to be setting our goals, doing our brainstorming, and getting clarity around the things that have happened in the previous cycle. So, in your menstrual phase, that's when you're resting, when you're wanting to just rest and reflect and see what worked and what didn't work. So that when you move into your follicular phase, which is the next phase, you can start working on the things that didn't work, or do more of the things that did work. So that's your creativity time. That's your building new things. That is the time to use the energy that you have to start new things. So that's like for a woman that has a business, maybe that's the time that you write your captions or your blog posts or those types of things, because you have the energy to do it. Because sometimes we'll think, okay, we need to batch things during every once a week. Well, if you try to do that, then that might fall into your menstrual phase, right? And if you try to batch in your menstrual phase when you really are craving the rest, that's where burnout starts to begin. And so use that follicular phase, that energy you have to do that. During your ovulatory phase, which is the next one, we want to do things like be social, networking. So I'm not saying that some of these things don't fall outside of it, because like currently, I don't know if this is TMI on this, probably not, but I am in menstrual phase. But I went to a virtual networking event yesterday, but I did it because I knew the energy that this particular host has. And I said, you know what? I like her energy, and I feel like I can give the energy that I have to her. But I also knew that I needed to rest earlier in the day so that when I got there, I had that energy to do it. So, they're not hard and fast rules, but there really are things to look for and to pay attention to and to modify for. So, the other type of content to create during ovulatory, because you just generally have more confidence. Sometimes you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I look nice today, even, without makeup or whatever. It's just hormones. But doing reels, having the energy to record yourself on video, those types of things, that's perfect for ovulatory. And then in luteal, when you start to lose energy, that's when you're really detail oriented and want to write lists. I find myself writing like lists of things that I had started in follicular that I haven't finished. So I like to wrap up those tasks. It's kind of like a nesting phase, finishing up the things that you started. It's also a good time for your bookkeeping, because you're more detail oriented to get those things done. And then you start all over again, brainstorm and reflect.
Yeah. And one point I want to make too is like, 'cause a lot of women who are listening to this podcast, they're maybe thinking about transitioning off birth control. They might currently be on birth control. You know, a lot of us aren't taught that we have different phases of our cycle. We, like you said at the very beginning, it's like we're a 24-hour clock, which is really based off of a male's hormone cycle, not our own. We have like a 28-ish, everyone's different,
Yep.
day clock. So one point I want to make is if you're on birth control, you're not going to have these natural phases of your cycle. And I think you can still apply these things and start just learning to listen and be in tune with your body based on, kind of how you're feeling. And if you have come off birth control and maybe your period is not super regular right now, first of all, that's okay. I usually say like, the first 3 months, it's normal for it to be a little bit erratic or missing or whatnot. But then after that, we want to dig deeper. But again, you can just start like being more in tune with your body and start noticing like, oh, maybe there are different times where I feel more energized, or there are different times where I feel more introspective. And that's really, really cool. Versus I think we're just so taught like go, 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 push, push, push. And again, raising my hand here, like that is something that I have experienced burnout in my business because that's just how I, thought you get ahead. And that burnt me out and set me back.
Yeah, and to your point, when I do work with my clients, I have them to track what has happened with their energy over the day, over the week. And then, I also notice a change in myself and my energy during each year. So, you know, just like you said, paying attention and just becoming in tune with your body. But you have to become aware, and sometimes we're not aware. And so that's why I do say track it to begin with and
Hmm.
see where you can start putting in higher energy things during higher energy parts of the day. Like I know for myself, like the morning is when I have more energy. By 2 o'clock, I don't really want to be doing much. So, and that doesn't
Yeah.
matter what phase that I'm in, right? I could be in follicular and ovulatory with all kinds of energy, but I know that during that time of day, I don't really have it. So, being able to plan around that stops that frustration, that overwhelming, that feeling of being inconsistent, and just accepting where you are and being able to plan for it.
Yeah. And the other thing because I know more about like cycles thinking for nutrition, like specific foods and nutrients you need more of in certain phases of your cycle. So that's why I was like, I want Janina to come on to like be the expert with like business stuff and work stuff. Um, and with that, I always tell women, I'm like, this is something like it's going to change. Like you said, like you can't just take into account like your cycle. It's a good thing to take into account, but think about like maybe you have like a baby and he or she isn't sleeping well one week. And so it's like when you should be having more energy, but like you were drained because you're not getting enough sleep, or it's a stressful week at work. And, or I know for me, like I tend to get like a burst of energy before my period and I feel pretty energized on my period. And then afterward, or like towards the end, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to rest now. So I don't know what that's about, but I think it's my body like prepping me to like have my period. So,
Yeah.
it's everyone's body is so different. So we don't want to be like perfectionistic about this. It's very much like just be in tune with your body. And that's where working with a coach like you can be really helpful because you can start to see like what are your patterns and like what makes the most sense based on your life too, not just your cycle, but your cycle in combination with your life and your reality.
Absolutely. Because, like you said, everyone's different. I can tell you what I do, but it doesn't matter.
So, how would someone like, let's just, well, trying to think what would be most helpful to go through next. I want to talk about like how you would start incorporating this if this is like completely new information to you, but then also I want to talk about for someone who doesn't maybe own their business. So I think let's talk about like how would you incorporate this if you're someone who owns your own business, or just in general if you want to start maybe, aligning your work tasks with more of your cycle so you can optimize better, but you're like, I don't know where the heck to start. I'm looking at my calendar and I have like everything's like mishmashed in there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've actually made a list of like a loose list of the best tasks for each phase of your cycle. And I give that away for free. I guess we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But that's the best place to start is just get the list of the things that are the best for each task. And that way you can take your next, cycle and see what's on your list, what's on your calendar, and then just move it around, and move around what can be moved around because it is understandable that there are some things that you can't move around that others do have more control over. Like I said, that networking meeting that I went to in menstrual phase, like I can't control when she decided that she wanted to schedule her networking meeting. So no, I couldn't put that in follicular or ovulatory phase for myself. I had to do and modify my schedule in another way in order to do that and be able to show up in the way that I wanted to. So just knowing loosely or, what things to try, because that's one of the things that I say, tell my clients when we first start working together is let's do this and let's try it out and see how it feels for the first cycle. because you might want to change it around a little bit and be flexible and see what works for you. The second thing would be to also track your energy. Where is your energy going? Because where's your energy leaking as well? That's the other thing that I talk about is where is it leaking? Where are you giving your energy to things that are not good for you? Things like scope creep, like if you're a service provider and you have your clients are calling you at times that are not within the parameters on your contract, or they decided that they want to message you on Instagram instead of the way that you decided that you wanted for them to communicate. That is a way that you are leaking energy. If you haven't put it in your contract, put it in your contract. You know, put those, fix those leaks, patch those holes so that then once you do use those tasks that are good for the phase that you're in, you also have a good handle on your boundaries so that it's easier and simpler, not easier, but because it's not always easy to make these kinds of changes because it's the way that you've been doing things for a really long time. But it does make it simpler for you to make these changes in a way that protects your nervous system and protects your boundaries so that when you do move forward, it is in a way that feels good to you personally. So get that list of things, of tasks that work well during each phase. And then also just take a look at where your energy is going and the things that you can change to make them better for you.
And if we even take it a step further back, if someone is, not on birth control, but they have no clue how to track their cycle, like
Yeah.
this is the first time of them learning about these types of things. Do you have any recommendations of like where to start to learn about this and start tracking? Like, do you use an app? Do you have any specific like tips or tricks for that?
Yeah. So I don't use an app. I actually use like a paper calendar. I've gone back to like paper everything. That's just been my thing over the last like year and a half is just going back to paper. But like days 1 to 5 in general, that's how long your menstrual cycle, like the menstrual phase is. But you would count
Yeah,
how
when
long
you're on
those
your
are,
period.
right? Yes, when you're on your period, when you are bleeding. And then follicular is the next 7 days. So usually in general, like you said, in general, we're 28 days, 28-day cycle, but it doesn't
Yep.
always fall that way.
Yep.
So loosely those next, 7 days. So days 6 through 13. So, and then after that, then you've got about 4 days or so of ovulatory. And then your last 10 days are luteal. So there's early luteal and late luteal where your hormones are starting to drop off, but then they really drop off in that late luteal where you either like you have a burst of energy. Some women have a really heavy drop of energy.
Yes.
And so you usually know that you can feel that in the last 4 to 5 days right before your cycle starts. I know that I am starting to enter into perimenopause just a little bit, which is not fun. Um, and so I am starting to have like I've had like I had a night sweat like the day before my cycle started. So like paying attention to those little things can help you to see where your hormones are and when your next cycle is going to start, if it's going to be a little bit shorter or a little bit longer.
Okay. Yes, that's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are tons of apps out there. And one thing
Yeah.
that women get in my VIP coaching program is you get access to the fertility awareness method course by one of my colleagues, Vicky, who's been on the
Oh,
podcast before. And that really teaches you, really in depth about your cycle. So if that's something you're interested in, that's something that she has available, and you get access in VIP. So there's tons of resources out there. But I think exactly like you said, it can be as complicated or as simple as you want. Just start with your period, notice when it starts, when it ends, and then start counting and just noting that and then tracking it
yep.
somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Because you have to be aware. Like, I think I was talking to somebody else the other day, and I'm like, just about something random. Like, it's just about awareness. You can't make any changes or do something different if you're not aware of where
Yeah.
you even are.
Yep. Yeah, and like you said, like you start to notice, like once you've been doing it for long enough, it becomes more intuitive. Like you
Hmm.
can just tell, like based on how you feel. Like I can just tell, like I can tell I'm right at the end of like ovulation right now. And you can also track this with your cervical mucus. We have other episodes about that, but not to
Yes.
get too in the weeds and off topic, but there's so many ways. But I can tell I'm in ovulation because I'm like, yeah, like I'm like, oh, I feel more energized. Like I feel like I look in the mirror and I'm like glowing. And, my fiance, I'm like, you look cuter today than you did a few days ago, like
Yes. Yes. My husband does the same
so
thing. He-
yeah.
or he says, because he tracks it mentally. He doesn't like write it down or anything, but like there are certain things that he's like, okay, are you in luteal phase? Or okay, I can tell like you're coming out of, or your cycle's gonna start in a couple, like he can
That's
tell
funny.
intuitively now because I've been talking about it to him for so long. It's part of our relationship now, which is really nice,
Yeah.
because sometimes women tend to think that it's taboo to talk about, but
Mhm.
if you don't talk about it with your significant other, then they don't understand the changes that are happening to us either. And then that doesn't help either of us in the relationship. So I find it really helpful to talk about it.
Yeah. And on that note, too, I think a lot of times the only reason we're like talking about our period is when it's like bad.
Hmm.
We're like, oh, I'm about to start my period. Like, I'm a raging bee, or like, oh, I'm on my period. I'm just drained. And it's like, I think that's fair. But first of all, you shouldn't have to feel that way. So if
Right.
that's how you feel, you need to work with somebody to get to the root cause of that. But, I think it's like a connection thing versus I love talking about like, let's change the narrative of like, like yes, it's okay to like, kind of talk about those things in that way, but it's like you shouldn't feel that way. And I think that's like part of the reason why that so many women are struggling with it because it's like kind of normalized to just feel really bad at certain points of your cycle when it shouldn't. It shouldn't have to be like that. So that's another thing of like talking about it of like the good parts of like when you feel more energized, you're like, oh, this is because I'm in follicular phase, or I feel like socializing more. Like, let's plan a date night when I'm in ovulatory.
Yeah, yeah. And to your point too, I was talking to one of my clients and she was like, her voice note was a little bit longer than usual and she's like, I can tell I'm in follicular. I don't even have to look. She's like, because she was just having so many creative ideas. And so like I love that. I love that part of it to help them to see, or when they do see and they're more aware so they can tell me where they are without me having to look at it anymore.
Mhm.
And so that's the power that comes from this,
Yeah.
because she's starting something totally new in her business and she timed it perfectly, even with that, because we're just in a maintenance right now. So she timed it perfectly without me. I didn't have to help her at all. And she just like was telling me everything that she was doing. And so when she's going to be at peak when it's time to open doors to her new space. So I'm really excited for her.
Yeah, that's so cool. So let's talk about if you're not a business owner,
Okay.
how can you incorporate some of these things into your work?
Yeah. So are you looking for like work, or can we talk about home as well?
We can do both. Let's talk about
Okay.
both because I was thinking that too. I was like, if you're a stay-at-home mom, like you're working at
Yeah.
home.
Okay. Yeah. If we're talking about work, if you're working for someone, which I don't know if you've heard, but there's somewhere that they have decided to give 3 days off of menstrual leave per month for females somewhere in the world. I can't remember where it is, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's that's where we all need to
Like every
be.
month.
Yes, every month, 3 days
Oh,
off if they choose to take it. Um, but to be able to, if you are, especially do like project based tasks, you know, you can use those same tasks that are given to business owners and use those things. Brainstorm when you're in menstrual and start the project in follicular and finish it up in luteal. If you have deadlines like that, you can use the same tasks within your site, within your work. Now, it is a little different if you're working in a place like a maybe like a warehouse, or somewhere where you're doing the same thing every day, but you also need to notice where this is more of an energy, where you're tracking your energy for the day or for the week, will come in rather than just your month. Because if you don't have control over what type of work you're doing at all, you can track how your energy is. If you have more energy in the morning, push a little bit more in the morning and then drop off a little bit during the afternoon. Or if it's the opposite way, use your energy in that way. But figure out how that is, become aware of how you're feeling. Maybe you have more energy, right after lunch, push when you can push and slow down when your body is ready for you to slow down. Now, if we're talking about at home, I find that like Luteal, I am an organizer. Everything gets organized during Luteal. So if I have left stuff out during like my creative phases where, because I just be honest, I am not a daily resetter of the house. Only the kitchen. The kitchen gets cleaned every single day. That
Mine
gets,
does not.
yes, that gets cleaned every day. Um, but like even in my office, like sometimes I'll have stuff just kind of laid out from when I was like thinking about things and I've printed stuff off because again, I'm starting to use paper. So there's like paper everywhere. But during my luteal phase, it starts to make me crazy. And so I organize all of that during that time. So if you have a time like spring cleaning, like right now, wait till your luteal phase and do your spring cleaning then. You're much more detail oriented and it will give you a satisfying feeling. I've also seen like I was on Threads the other day and someone was like, yeah, I just organized this and I did that, but I did nothing on my to-do list. And it was like, well, I know why. Like, and I didn't.
Mhm.
I actually asked her. I was like, are you in like you think you're like in your luteal phase and what was on your list is probably like starting new stuff. And she was like, yeah, that is actually the case. And I'm like, well, this is why, like, you're biologically doing the wrong thing. So just flip it, let that be, and then, do the new things during your follicular. She was like, oh, okay. So those little like awareness things. But things like, buying new things for your home, if you want to like buy new things, you're more intuitive during your menstrual phase. That is actually a very good time to buy new things for your home because you're not going to just be doing like type of like a retail therapy type thing. You're going to be looking and actually analyzing whether it is something that is good for your home, whether you actually need it. Because during our follicular and ovulatory phases, what are we doing? We're like, we have all of the energy. And so we just want to go, go, go and do, do, do. And then when we get to luteal, we're like, why do we have this? So during menstrual is a good time to purchase new things for your home. But just like on a day-to-day basis, really just understanding where your day is, so that you don't get to the weekend and feel like you have to do everything all in the weekend. Just noticing what feels good when. Cleaning, I feel like cleaning the bathrooms and things like that, those have to be done on a weekly basis, but like a deep clean for the month, I do that during follicular phase just because I know that it takes more energy to do it. So doing that type of deeper cleaning is better, but definitely decluttering and organizing luteal. So, noticing when you start doing things that feel like natural and then placing them in those places in the future definitely does help. But that's how I work with it. Basing what the tasks are that are good for the phase to what is good for the phase in the home. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was, after listening to some of your podcast episodes, one thing that stood out to me is when you talked about what you just said of the list, when you have a list of things to do and you get nothing done on that list, but you do a bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can so relate to that so much, like personally and professionally in my business. And so
Yeah.
I was actually like talking to a client about that where she was saying, she was like, I can't focus and I'm doing all these other things. And I was like, well, what phase are you in? And I was like, you might want to listen to this podcast episode and
Oh,
I'm going to be interviewing her because it was just really interesting because I think like, this goes back to kind of like the mindset around productivity and I have to get everything done on my list and check these things off. And if I don't, then I'm unproductive or there's something wrong with me or I have ADHD or, we get really down on ourselves when it's like this. I think this approach gives you grace just to check in and be like, well, that makes sense. Like I was working against my biology and what I'm meant to do at this time versus viewing it as like a personality fail.
Right. Yeah. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, but yeah, absolutely. Cause that's really what most women are feeling like. Like there's something wrong with them when there's not. It's where we are biologically and it's okay to move things around to fit that. Just because so many times and so often we've heard and seen what productivity looks like for some people or and it's not, I don't want to sound like male bashing, but productivity has just looked like a 24-hour cycle and that's just not how we where we are. And
Mhm.
so rewriting the narrative for ourselves really does help in how we feel about ourselves and our relationship with our to-do list, our relationship with people, our relationships with ourselves. And it's really important that we take the time to look at it and start working with it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you think is important in this conversation that we didn't touch on, or anything else you want to share with listeners before we wrap up with our final question?
Yeah. So as far as rest is concerned, I think that so many people think that rest means inactivity, and rest does not have to mean inactivity. So sure, there are times where you want to sit on the couch and watch TV and do nothing. That is great. But sometimes rest means, and a lot of times it means doing whatever lights you up, whatever makes you feel good. So it is really important that you have something to do, a hobby that does not is not connected to you making money. Like that's the thing. Like that's the caveat. Okay, so if it's running or going for a walk or like yesterday we went and played pickleball, doing things that feel good to you. And even though I'm in menstrual, some people will say that's a follicular activity. It's like, no, my body was craving movement for my type of
That's
rest.
where you have to be flexible, not like, and listen to how your body's feeling versus these are hard and
Exactly.
fast rules. Like, that's not what we're doing. Yep.
Exactly. So, and I find it important to do some type of rest every day. So even if that's 5 minutes, if you really love to read, read for 5 minutes. Do something for you every single day.
Hmm. Yes. No, I'm glad that you brought that up. So, and this is something, Carrie and I had this conversation a few weeks ago, the nervous system coach. So if you haven't listened to
Mhm.
that episode and this is resonating, or you're like, okay, I think I need to rest more. It's not the, we're not, we know who we're speaking to. We know we're speaking to like motivated, ambitious women.
Yep.
And this is something, it's not just about stress less, like do less. This is about being like really strategic and giving yourself what your body needs because that will make you more productive. I think that's one thing I want to like drive home is like
Mhm.
these small changes and like resting and having fun and playing will make you more productive. I remember, I'll just share like a personal story of this with my business. A couple, let's see, I think it wasn't this past December, but it was the December before. So it was about a year into my business and it's really hard to grow a business and I was just pushing, pushing, pushing and I was trying to speak to anyone I could help versus really niching down and doing what I do now and I just felt so discouraged and so burnt out because I was just like a machine. Like I was just getting up and I was serving my clients and I was doing all this content and I was putting out so many feelers for networking and just so much stuff and I just felt so unfulfilled and so blah. And I hadn't taken any vacation my first year of business because I didn't feel like I could because I was working for myself and getting my business off the ground. And we went on a cruise and I completely disconnected from like, you don't have internet unless you pay for it on there. And so I was like, this is good. It forces me to disconnect. And I came back from that cruise so refreshed, so clear on who I wanted to speak to, what I wanted to say. And that's when I really honed in on like what my business was going to look like, and that's when I really started attracting like my ideal clients and the women who I really love working with, who I now work with today. So I share that because it seems counterintuitive to rest, but really it is so productive. I think shifting your mindset around rest is really important, like you shared.
Yeah. Yeah. There's clarity in the stillness.
Yeah, just like with working out, if you do like a hardcore workout every single day, you're going to be really burnt out. You're going to
Yeah.
dread it. You're not going to perform very well. Versus if you take rest days, you're going to be excited to come work out and you're going to perform better and like do your PRs and, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as our wrap up question, I always like to ask guests how they are nourishing themselves recently.
Yeah, so I have started. I do love Pilates, so I've been doing Pilates for a long time, but I am starting to learn the fundamentals of Pilates. So I'm actually taking a Pilates course, like to really get down into like how to control my core and the real mind body connection that Pilates has, and so that's been like really fun and interesting to me. So that's been my like daily like let's get on the mat and see what she's talking about today, and just understanding what my body can do. That's been really, really nice. So that's my new thing.
I love that. So are you getting certified to like teach Pilates or is it like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
could teach
okay,
it if I wanted to. Yeah.
cool. Do you want to do that or are you just kind of like, I just want to learn about it right now and then maybe?
I might. I might. I mean, I'll have the certification. So, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see
I
what
used to teach,
happens.
I didn't teach Pilates, but I used to teach group fitness like many, many years ago. So
Yeah.
I loved it in that season of my life. It was cool.
Yeah, because I do see how I could connect it with helping women with their cycles,
Yeah.
like which are the most helpful moves and positions within each phase of your cycle. I definitely see that how I could connect that. So we'll see. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
I think Pilates is a good, like, kind of like yoga, where it's hard, but it's also like mind body connection and less
Yep.
hardcore, I think, than, what some women need more of in their life. So I think that's also, you
Hmm.
could play around with that too and connect it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so tell everybody who's listening where they can find you, and then you're sharing a freebie with them, which you mentioned earlier, but you can tell us more
Yes.
about that because I'm going to download that. I've been meaning to download it, so I'm going to do that after this.
Awesome.
Start implementing it in my own life, and yeah, where people can find you and connect with you if they're interested in working with you or just learning more from you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Threads at Janina Hamilton or Janina H Coaching. Sorry, on both
It'll be in the
Instagram.
show notes.
Okay, yes, Instagram and Threads, and then yes, the CEO cycle syncing planning map. It has at least 4 or 5 different tasks assigned for each phase of your cycle. So if you are looking to start anything or get ready to start using cycle syncing for your life or your business, either one, the tasks apply, the principles apply. It is there for you to have for absolutely free.
Very, very cool. And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And then tell them about your podcast.
Yes. So my podcast is called Work with Your Cycle, Hormone Based Productivity and Profit for Women in Business. And so we do talk about how to use each phase of your cycle to really help you to be both profitable and productive in a way that feels good to you. And so, like Taylor said, she's going to be on the podcast here very soon, and I'm so excited to really get this started and getting going. It is still relatively new, but it is growing very quickly. I've found that there are a lot of people that are looking to learn about what they can do differently because they're tired of burning out. They're tired of feeling like they aren't doing enough. And this is a solution. and it's a solution that they didn't know that their body already had, their biology already has for them. So that's what we talk about. We've got, like I said, Taylor on there. We did talk to another fertility awareness coach on there, and on down the road, we do have other women that are coming on that are talking about different business things, like brand awareness and things like that. That will help you to support your business.
Yeah, love that. So a good combination of hormone cycle syncing stuff and then also like business coach stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This is going to be so helpful. And as always, if you like this episode, share it with a friend, a colleague, a family member who needs to hear it. And if you would be so kind to write a review, like this, whatever platform that you're listening or watching this on YouTube, if you're on there, it means so much to me. It really helps other listeners find the show and get this information into more hands of women who need it. And until next time, stay nourished, friends.